Okay, good afternoon, pilot teachers, and good afternoon, students. Good afternoon, teachers. Thank you. Sit down. Okay, we will start off our lesson by looking at the correction to those 6 activities that you were assigned to complete for your homework. And those activities you should be able to find or locate on page 10 of your booklet. And they are basically to do with rice cultivation and the processes that are actually involved in the cultivation of rice. From our last lesson, we looked at example of intensive farming, and that is rice farming basically in Indonesia, especially on Java. And we also looked at some of the photographs or pictures to show the different processes which are actually involved in the cultivation of rice. I also ask you to complete the activities or 6 activities on page 10 of the booklet. I'd like us to go through now for the correction of those activities on page 10. Okay, to recap on the activities so that you know exactly what you were supposed to have done. Question number 1 was for you to describe or to explain what is double cropping. Question number 2, to explain what is sawa. Number 3, in what type of terrain would you find rice growing in terraces? Question number 4, to explain what are band or bands. Question number 5, there were 3 words given: paddling, threshing, and winnowing. And you were asked to define each one of those to do with the processes of rice growing. And activity number 6 was for you to construct a flow chart illustrating the rice growing processes, especially in Java. Okay, we go through now and let's look at the correction of those 6 activities. The first one, definition to what is double cropping, or an explanation to what is double cropping. Ovio, we'll start from the back and work our way to the front.
To grow 2 crops of rice a year in the same field.
Okay, very good. Let's check. Double cropping, your answer should be to grow 2 crops of rice in a year on the same field. So those 3 important information must be present for your explanation to what double cropping is. Number 1, there has to be 2 crops of rice. Number 2, they have to grow in the same year. And number 3, they have to grow on the same field. So double cropping is simply to grow 2 crops of rice in a year on the same field. Okay, good. Let's move on. Question number 2, to explain what is sawa. Renagi.
It's a type of farming.
Type of farming, more information. Type of farming could be intensive, it could be extensive, it could be pastoral, it could be arable.
Required irrigated fields.
Okay, type of farming which requires irrigated field, and it is mainly to do with what type of crop? Rice, okay? So here we're looking at, basically, it is an Indonesian term for wet rice cultivation. So when we're looking at paddy fields, especially in terms of growing rice on flooded and irrigated fields, then the term sawa can actually be used, as it is an Indonesian term to describe wet rice cultivation. Okay, you check and make your correction. You might go to Australia or in Papua New Guinea and say sawa, and people might not even know what that is. It is definitely an Indonesian term, basically to describe cultivation of rice, but it is wet rice cultivation. Okay, number 3. Selesi, question 3. Sorry, before we go to question 3, we have a picture of photograph there, just basically showing us what we mean by sawa, or wet or flooded fields for cultivation of rice. And you can see there from the process of planting, people are actually planting rice in flooded fields. And the flooded field itself can be referred to as sawa. Okay, let's move on. Question number 3. Without the answers given there, we'll check in what type of terrain would you find rice growing in terraces? Celeste?
Hills or slopes?
Okay, our answer definitely is to do with hills or slopes. The terraces would be best actually practiced on hills or slopes. If you have flat land, terraces may not be suitable because usually terraces would be more suitable on hills or slopes. An example to show us terracing, we have a hill or a slope there, and you can see examples of terraces actually being constructed or built. Okay, the next question number 4, Gideon, to define or to explain what are band or bands.
Bands are small ditch like features which acts as embankments to prevent water flowing down to the next terrace.
Okay, very good. We're looking at an embankment which prevents the flow of water or which regulates the amount of water in a terrace. We have to also note that the band would usually be built where terraces are built. So we are looking at a hilly type topography, and we are looking at one terrace higher than the next to allow the flow of water or to regulate the amount of water in a terrace. We might have to regulate it by using what you call a band. So you open that particular gate and it allows the flow of water from one terrace to the next one. And if you do not want, if you want more water in a terrace, then you close the band so that the water can stay within the terrace. So it acts as an embankment which prevents the water from flowing down from one terrace to the next. Okay, if we look at perhaps an example to help us understand what a band is, this diagram here shows us a boundary that separates one field from the next field, a paddy field here. An embankment would be, or the band would be built around here like a gate. And when it is actually open, it will allow the amount of water in here to actually flow out if there is excess, or if there is not enough, it will be open so that the water which is contained in the ditch there can actually be brought in to flood that particular terrace. Okay, we move on. For exercise or activity 5, there are 3 words of which we need to define each one of those. Silo, the first one, to explain what is paddling. Can you define paddling?
Paddling is the stomping action of the buffalo and the men working the plow that helps to cement the mud into the more impervious layer.
Okay, very good. And your definition would be exactly what is on the monitor there. The stomping action of buffaloes and men working on the plow, which then helps to cement the mud into a more impervious layer. This particular process is a process which is done when the fields are being prepared for planting. In your flow diagram, if you have constructed your diagram in a logical sequence, the first thing that needs to be done before planting occurs is the preparation of the field. And one of the things that are actually done to prepare the fields for planting is paddling. Okay, we have a picture or a diagram to show that particular action. You have the buffaloes and you also have that person working on or controlling the buffaloes, and the stomping action of both the men and the buffaloes working on the plow to cement the mud into a more impervious layer. Okay, we'll move on. The next word there is threshing. Luisa.
Threshing, rice stalks tied into large bundles, and by beating the bundles against a bamboo frame, the rice seeds are separated from the stalks.
Okay, very good. It is a harvesting process whereby the rice stalks are tied into large bundles and the rice seeds are separated from the stalk by beating the bundles against a bamboo frame. Okay, you check and make your corrections. We note some of the pictures there, or two of those pictures there, will show us the process of threshing, which comes in during harvesting. So the rice stalks or the rice plant is collected, tied into bundles, and then the bundles are actually hit against a bamboo frame, and the purpose for that is to remove the seeds from the stalk. And that process then is referred to as threshing. Mason, the next word given, winnowing. Explain what winnowing is.
Winnowing is the removal of the husk from the rice seed. It is done by the rice is placed in a small sieve and thrown up in the air several times to allow the wind to blow the husk away.
Okay, good. Let's look at the definition. It is definitely a harvesting process. It is to do with the removal of husk from the rice seed by placing the rice into a sieve, and the seeds are thrown into the air several times to allow the wind to blow the husk away from the seed. Okay, and that's the process again, which is to do with harvesting. Here is an example of winnowing. The sieve is that equipment that the rice seeds are actually placed in. It's a dish-like equipment. And we have another example there of winnowing taking place. Okay, finally, you were asked to construct a flow chart to show us the processes of rice growing. We double check. Your flow chart should include the following stages or steps. And if you did miss out any one of those, try to include them. Not only that, it is important for you to also know the definitions to some of the words that are given in those processes. So we start off with the preparation of the fields. While the fields have been prepared, the seeds need to be put into the nursery. That is important part of preparation. If we are building on hills or slopes, terraces need to be built, and those are all part of the preparation. The paddling action that we have already defined, stomping, are all to do with field preparation. Then comes the planting, of which the seeds, when they are ready, are taken out into the fields and planting takes place. During the time when plants are growing, after planting, weeding needs to actually take place to allow or not to allow weeds to actually destroy the rice plant. When the rice is actually ready, then harvesting takes place. The harvesting process will involve threshing and winnowing. And after those two important processes are done, then the rice can actually be stored for later consumption, or it can actually be put into plastics or bags and etc. and exported to those countries that require or need to import rice. But those are some of the important processes that you should have got down in your flow chart or flow diagram. Any queries or questions with regards to those activities? None? Okay, we'll move on. The next lot of activities that we are going to work on, they are still to do with rice growing, but this time we are moving away now from Indonesia or on Java. We are going to a neighboring country in the monsoon Asia region, and we're going to look at some exercises on farming on the Ganges plain, which is in India. You have 3 lots of sketches that you will be seeing very shortly, and you are required then to do the following activities. Number 1, next to each of those sketches, sketch A, B, and C, you're going to write a few words explaining what is actually happening in each of those sketches. There are 3 sketches, A, B, and C. For each one, explain what is happening in a few words. Number 2, alongside each of the sketch, you are asked to describe how each of those tasks will be performed if you were on a British wheat farm. And finally, number 3, You're going to explain which event or events take place: A, before; B, during; and C, after the summer monsoon rains. Okay, the three activities will go together with the three sketches, but you have to do those three activities for each of the sketches that are given. The sketches are labeled A, B, and C, and the three activities will go with each of those sketches. In other words, for each of the sketch, you must answer the three questions. Okay, that's sketch A. You are expected to write a few words saying what is happening in sketch A. Sketch B, again, to write a few words saying what is happening in sketch B. And sketch C, write a few words explaining what is happening in that particular sketch. Okay, I'll give you at least 3 minutes for you to give a description on what is happening on each of those three sketches. Okay, after you've completed activity 1 for those three sketches, the second question: along each of those sketches, you describe how each of those tasks would be performed on a British wheat farm. Yep, good. Sorry? Say, for example, if you were in a British wheat, they decided to grow rice, if they decided to grow rice, and the processes were actually the same, do you think they're still going to use buffaloes and men if you were in a British wheat farm? That's the question that you need to answer. Or what do you think might happen? The processes will still be the same, but do you think the activities and the way in which they do the activities, is it going to be exactly the same as that, or do you think there might be a difference? If it is the same, then make note of it. If you think there's a difference, then describe. And finally, the last question. You can see there that there are 3 activities taking place: sketch A, sketch B, and sketch C. All you have to do is decide which event or events will take place before, during, and after the summer monsoon rains. So if you were in a British farm, how would this activity be done? Number 2, if you were in a British farm, how would planting be done? Is it going to be just the same as women planting rice, or what do you think? If you were in a British farm, wheat farm, are the women going to be harvesting, or what do you think is going to happen? That's what you're supposed to write in number 2. So here you're saying similar task will actually be performed, okay? The planting, the wooden plow, whatever. And variation is the temperature. I don't think you have understood the activity. Okay, we read it again. Along each of the sketch, describe how the task would be performed on a British wheat farm. Okay, first of all, what is happening here? You are definitely correct to say that it is the preparation of the field, the paddling action and the stomping action to cement the mud into a more impervious layer. Okay. If you were in a British wheat farm and they were practicing this, do you think the buffalo and the men will be walking to cement the mud? Or what do you think might happen? This activity here, is it going to be the same? You don't know. Okay, maybe then go over it again, and when the students give answers, you might see the logic and what the question is actually trying to get in terms of your answer. Okay, try the other ones and see if it can help. Okay, we'll correct. Question number 2. Okay, just along the side here, where number 2 is, if you were in a British wheat farm, what is this process you have identified? Paddling. What is this process? Oh, yeah, obviously planting. And here? Okay, so if you were in a British wheat farm, would a buffalo and a man be paddling the land? Or what would happen? Exactly, the machines will do the work. If you were in a British wheat farm, will the women be planting wheat on those hectares and hectares of land? Who's going to do the planting? Exactly. How about in harvesting? Exactly. That's all the question is asking. We understand that? Okay. Okay, let's check. We go back then to looking at the three questions. You have three sketches given. The three questions are, number one, by each sketch, you are supposed to write a few words saying what is actually happening. Number two, alongside each of those sketches, you describe how each of those tasks would be performed if you were on a British wheat farm. And number three, all you have to do is decide which of those events would take place before, during, and after the summer monsoon rains. Let's look at the sketches. That's the first one. By now, you should already be able to identify what is actually taking place. Sketch B. Again, by looking at the sketch, you should already be aware of the process or the activity taking place. Sketch C. Again, you should be able to pick up straight away the activity that is taking place. Okay, Kiran. Sketch A. Can you tell us what is actually happening in sketch A?
A wooden plow is pulled along by two water buffalo and a rice. In a rice, straw is plowed in the elbow to fertilize the soil.
Okay, very good. We're just basically looking at two water buffaloes and a person or a human there actually preparing the fields ready for planting. The paddling action and the stomping action that we discussed already could be used in your description on the activity taking place in A. Anita, write a few words or explain what you think is happening in sketch B.
In sketch B, the rice are being transplanted by the people.
Okay, good. It's simply to do with planting. That's all you need to actually put down. Planting of rice. That's the activity happening at B. Okay, sketch C. Elsie. Can you explain what is happening in sketch C?
The rice are being harvested.
Okay, harvesting. So there you go. Question number one, paddling or preparation of the field. Sketch A, B, planting. Sketch C is harvesting. Okay, we move on now to question 2 for each of those. Brendan, if you were performing that particular action on a British wheat field, can you describe what you would actually do? Or is the activity going to be the same as what you can see from sketch A?
A tractor being used to pluck the area of rice.
Okay, so instead of the men with 2 buffaloes, what would happen then would be machineries would actually be used. And here, the plowing machine or the tractor would be more appropriate, correct? And that's our answer for number 2, sketch A. For B, sketch B. If you were in a British wheat farm, how would you perform this particular task, or how would that task be performed?
In a British wheat farm, the process of planting will be replaced by machinery.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Here we're looking at machines to do the planting. So instead of the women or the men out on the field planting the rice, the machines would actually do the work. Correct. And finally, for C.
Machines will be harvesting.
Okay, good. Machines would actually do the work of harvesting. The harvesters would be what would be used for performing that particular task. So that's all you need to actually write down for activity 2 for each of the sketch. Finally, which event or events would take place before, during, and after the summer monsoon rains?
Planting.
Planting when? Before, during, or after?
Before.
Okay, planting would be before the monsoon rains?
Yeah.
We're happy with him? Now there's some students that are shaking their heads, some are saying yes, others are not. Okay, he could be correct to say that planting could be done before the summer monsoon rains. He could be correct. There could be another activity that should also be done before the monsoon rains, and that is plowing or the preparing of the fields. You don't want the rain to fall when you are out there preparing the fields. Otherwise, you might not do a good job because the fields will be wet all the time. So before the monsoon rains, preparation of the field is important, and if you have done the flooding, then you could definitely do some planting also. So the question there says, which event or events? Before the monsoon rain, you can have preparation of the fields and also planting. How about during the monsoon rain? What should or could take place? Shelley, right in front.
Planting.
Definitely yes. During the monsoon rain, if you have done the preparation of the fields before, then perhaps during or at the beginning of the monsoon rain season, you start your planting so that there would be enough water during the monsoon season for the rice to actually grow in. Finally, after the monsoon rain, what would be the best event or events that should take place? Catherine.
Harvesting.
Okay, definitely harvesting. You don't want to harvest during the rainy season because by then the fields would be dried and you should be able to pick the crops, or you cut the crops ready for the process of threshing and winnowing. Okay, with that information, that will also conclude our lesson for today. The activities that you see on page 10 of your booklet, activity number 7, plus activity number 8 on page 10 of your booklet would be what I would like you to work on for your homework. Okay, class, if you can stand up now. To the pilot teachers, our keyword for lesson 145 is threshing. Good afternoon and thank you, students.